Did you know that some people worry about tomorrow when in fact tomorrow hasn't even arrived? It's called anxiety. You may want to watch today's teaching about anxiety. It may give you a brighter tomorrow.
It's time for In the Word with Bill Harris, brought to you by Rapture Ministries. Here's our host, Reverend Bill Harris.
Hello, I'm Bill Harris of Rapture Ministries. Welcome to In the Word. Today we conclude our three-part series of teachings on victory over regrets, worries, and anxieties. Our focus today is on anxieties about the future. Now, last week, of course, we dealt with worries of the present. And 2 weeks ago, we dealt with the regrets of your past. And again, today, we're going to be dealing with the anxieties about your future. Now, on one occasion, we have Jesus speaking here, and obviously there were people in the audience that were dealing with anxieties about their future. And in Matthew chapter 6, verse 34, here's how the Lord chose to deal with him. He said, "So do not worry or be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will have worries and anxieties of its own. Sufficient for each day is its own trouble." And isn't that the truth? It is the truth indeed. Now, it's important to understand that we're not talking about being irresponsible, not being concerned about tomorrow, things that need to be prepared, and being concerned about what has to be done and what preparations need to be made. I'm not talking about that. But when they just shut down out of worry about tomorrow and what's going to happen tomorrow, and they have no way of having any control over tomorrow, but they're taking the time and the energy to worry about it anyway. That's not good. It's not good mental health, and it's not good spiritual health. Because keep in mind, when you're worrying, and that's what anxiety is, it's worry. When you're worried, you cannot be worried and have faith in God at the same time. The two just do not mix. And so the Lord wants you to choose Him and be concerned about Him. Now, I want to give you a biblical example of anxiety. I want to show you a little bit about the story of Moses when God called him to the ministry. Now, Moses had been born a Hebrew slave, as many of you recall that are Bible scholars. And when Israel went into bondage by the Egyptians, he was in slavery. But he was adopted by the daughter of the Pharaoh, or the king of Egypt. And so he grew up as a prince in the house of Pharaoh, until one day he was out and about and he saw an Egyptian taskmaster that was abusing a Hebrew slave. And that was his blood brother, of course, I said blood brother in terms of the same culture and the like. So he reached over and grabbed the guy and he killed him. And he had to bury the guy. And then he became a fugitive from justice, and so he escaped. And his life was sought after, but he escaped into the desert. And for some 40 years, to make a long story short, he became a sheep herder. He married a woman who was of the tribe of the Midianites, and he became a sheep herder for his father-in-law. One day while out there in the desert taking care of sheep, God called him to the ministry. And when God did that, it startled him. It really startled him. And so let's go now to Exodus chapter 3, verse 11, and I want to show you. And Moses, well, first of all, let me set this up by saying God called Moses to the ministry, said, "I want you to lead my children Israel." And this is Moses' response. He said, "I want you to lead my children Israel out of slavery and to worship me." And Moses said unto God, "Who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Now, see, this is a concern about the future because he doesn't know how he's going to handle this future. And he doesn't think he's qualified to do that, as a matter of fact. And some of you out there now may be looking at your own qualifications or your own abilities or inabilities and be judging yourself based on that, saying, I just can't muster up the strength I need to do this. I don't think that I have the wherewithal to do it. And if God is calling you to move forward in a given area, you need to obey Him. It's not a matter of whether or not you're qualified. Some people look at it this way, that God is not looking necessarily at your abilities. He's looking at your availability. Are you available to do what he's calling you to do? Not necessarily whether you are able to do it. He will fortify you and give you the ability. He just wants you to be available. And that's what's happening here for Moses. Now, in the next verse, he's already made an excuse. He's always saying, I can't go. Who am I that I should go tell the Pharaoh to let all these Hebrew slaves go? And in verse 13, and Moses said to God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, now you want me to tell Israel that I'm going to be their next leader, to lead them out of slavery. So when I go to the children of Israel and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you. I'm your man now. And they shall say to me, well, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? So God told him exactly what he needed to be saying so that he would know exactly how to do this. And what he's really asking God is, Lord, what are my credentials? What credentials am I going to say? God will give you the credentials you need. And I don't say this wildly. I don't say this irresponsibly, I don't mean it in that way, but God will fortify you with the credentials you need to do the thing that God is calling you to do. He just wants you to make yourself available to do that. Now, in verse 14, let's go back to Exodus, verse 14 there. And here we see that the anger of the Lord is kindled against Moses. And why? Because Moses is offering up a lot of excuses why he can't do what God is giving him to do. And I'm making this story short, but there are a lot of excuses here. And so the anger of the Lord is kindled against Moses, and he said, is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? And that means that Aaron was a priest of God, and he was Moses' brother. I know he can speak well, because one of the things that Moses is saying he can't do, Moses is saying he can't talk. He says, I'm not articulate. I just can't speak well. And also, he says that, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. So God is saying, I'm going to use your brother to speak for you. And I will tell you what to say, and you tell your brother, and your brother then can speak to the Israelites, and he will be the spokesperson for you. And so the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses because he came up with all these excuses, didn't want to face his future. Some of you may be like that right now. You don't want to face your future. Let me just show you a list here of attitudes that some people have about their future. Look at this. Some have a no-care, worldly attitude about their future. There are some that they are fretful and they have an anxious attitude about it. There's some that are fearful and they're panicky, like Moses was, fearful and panicky. You just can't deal with their future. Others are quite self-assured. That is, these are people that are quite cocky. They think, well, I've got this. No, you don't want to say, I've got this, but the Lord has got this. And then you have the folks that are, they're God-centered. And they have a trusting attitude because they're putting their trust and they're showing their attitude to be godlike. And this is what God wants us to have. Now, I want to go to 1 Peter chapter 5. We're dealing with verse 7 here. And here's what the Lord tells us. When you have anxieties, he says, I want you, who said, to cast the whole of your care, that is, all of your anxieties, all your worries, and all your concerns. Does this fit anybody that's listening in today, that's watching on this program? All your anxieties, all your worries, all your concerns, he says, once and for all. Make this a one-time deal here. Once and for all, cast them all on him, for he cares for you affectionately. The Lord knows, he understands, he cares about your future. He understands what's got you so weak. Some of you may be weak. Some of you may be just strung out because you don't know how you're going to face your future. And like I said at the top of the program, people that are worried about tomorrow and tomorrow has not even arrived yet. You don't really know what tomorrow's going to bring until it gets here. And the Lord is saying, let's go back into that verse one time. He's saying, he cares affectionately for you, and he cares about you watchfully. This is the love of God being portrayed here. This is the Lord's love and concern. And I want to tell you that this that I just read you, this is not a suggestion. It's not a recommendation. It's a command. Again, let's read this one more time, because it's important that you get this. Don't miss this. 1 Peter 5, verse 7. And it says, casting the whole of your care, all your anxieties, all your worries, all your concerns, once and for all, on him. For he cares for you affectionately, and he cares about you watchfully. So the Lord is trying to tell you he's got this. It's not that you've got it. He's got it for you. But he wants you to cast that on him and give it over to him. Now, let's go another verse of encouragement that I want to give you. Philippians 4, verse 6, where the Lord says, do not fret or have any anxiety about anything. Well, let's underline that. Don't have any anxiety about anything, but in every circumstance and in everything. Now, again, this is everything. God's talking here. In everything by prayer, and you don't want to leave this out. You got to have prayer in there. And petition. Now, what is petition? Petition means specific prayer requests. These are definite, specific prayer requests that you are praying to the Lord to help you in terms of the circumstances that you're dealing with. Be very specific with the Lord in your prayer. Let's go back into the verse. At your definite request, with thanksgiving, you want to thank him in advance. Isn't this something? Now, some people would say, well, you're kind of getting ahead of yourself. No, by faith, you are thanking him in advance for what you are asking him to do before he even does it. You thank him in advance, okay? So giving thanks, continuing, the verse goes on to say, you are continuing to make your wants known to God. So it's not wrong at all to make your wants known to the Lord. He wants us to make our wants known to him, okay? All right, so that's verse 4 and 7. Verse 7 now. And God's peace shall be yours, that is, that tranquil state of a soul assured of its salvation through Christ. Your salvation through Christ. And so fearing nothing from God and being content with its earthly lot of whatever sort that is. That peace, let's change that, which transcends all understanding, shall garrison, it shall be like a troop, shall be like an army, shall garrison and mount guard over your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So this is what the Lord wants of us, is to put our trust and confidence in him. Now, one thing about the background of the Philippians that I should tell you about that gives even better context to this is this graph that I want to show you. When this command came to the Philippians, here's some of the things that they were confronted with. They were suffering severe religious persecution. So God is giving them a positive message. I just read it to you. In the midst of this severe religious persecution, as members, they were facing disunity and quarreling among themselves. It was topsy-turvy in that church. And lastly, the members were dealing with false teachers that were attacking the cross of Christ. They were attacking the credibility of Christ's death and resurrection. But in the midst of that, the Lord was telling them, nonetheless, to move forward. To move forward. Now, another thing I want to show you, another list as we wind this down, and the Lord is telling us how to overcome these anxieties. He says, by prayer, and that is peace that comes through prayer and positive thinking. You've got to continue to think positive. Peace and positive thinking. Okay? And by petition. And what did I say? That means by being very specific in your prayers in what you're asking God to do, and doing it with thanksgiving, making sure that you are making your wants known to God so he has an understanding of what you are asking for. Now, certainly we know the Lord understands even before you pray, but remember, the Lord takes us through this channel of asking. The Lord wants us to ask. Yes, he sees your circumstances. He sees what you're going through, but he still wants you to ask. So ask, and by all means, by prayer, by petition, specific request that is, and giving thanks to the Lord for the request even before it's granted, okay? Now, this is somewhat that's dealing with anxieties of the future. We're going to delve into this a little deeper in just a few moments. Stacey Fairman is coming, and we're going to have a good conversation about this, so don't go away. We're going to take a small break, and we'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us, and I certainly hope that our teaching today has been a big help to you. We're going to go deeper into that with Stacey Fairman, who's just joined us now to talk about the anxieties of our future.
Mm-hmm. Hi. So I figured I would start with what is happening in our world right now. There are so many things that are so concerning, and it's so easy. I'm even struggling with some of my children, worrying about the future, worrying about where our country is going. Mm-hmm. How do we learn to rest in the Lord?
Boy, what a big wide open question, particularly given the fact that, there's so much going on. Some people feel to the extent that our whole nation is up for grabs, that kind of thing. The only peace that comes is in God, so we must maintain contact with him. We must confess that we have our confidence in him. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm using to help me, I went to do early voting the other day, and I said, God, I thank you for the opportunity to be in a country where we can vote and vote early as well. And I said, but Lord, I know that when you walk into the voting booth, the election is over.
Right.
Right. And you're not even a registered voter, God. But when you walk in and cast your vote, it's over because he puts up kings and sets down kings. He has the ultimate authority in that. And so I am going to make myself satisfied with the outcome. I'm excited about what it might be, but I'm going to make myself satisfied with that outcome. And one of the things we have to do that I don't think we sometimes do in 1 Timothy chapter 2, beginning with verses 1 through 4, and that is to pray for our leaders. Mm-hmm. And that means, Stacey, you pray for them whether you agree with them or not.
I was going to say the ones we like or even the ones we don't like, right?
That's right. Yeah. Have to pray for them. And if we see that they're veering off, they're going astray, they're being unbiblical and that kind of thing, mm-hmm. we need to pray that God will open their eyes mm-hmm. to see, that God will surround them with people who can speak into their lives, that mm-hmm. kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And because in that regard, we're concerned about our future. And that's a good one. But it's one thing to be concerned about our future. It's another thing to have anxiety about it, and fear.
Right.
And so that's the difference between the two.
Right. So you talked a lot about Moses. He was quite anxious about the call of God on his life. Someone today may have feelings of anxiety about their calling. What would you say to encourage them?
You're going to have to spend time with God. And I think I'm making that a part of my answer for just about a lot of stuff. Because I assure you, if you go into that Bible and see how God called other people to the ministries, mm-hmm. he has always called them to do things that are beyond what they are capable of doing. And so that in itself can give you some anxiety.
And what do you think he's teaching us doing that?
He is teaching us to lean and depend solely on him.
Right.
He wants to get all the glory, Stacy.
Right.
He doesn't want us to say, well, I did this because I've got 5
Right.
degrees. Well, you may have more degrees than a thermometer, but that doesn't matter. We've got to be able to trust in him and his ability to pull it off. Think about this. God has agents all over the world that he can call at his disposal to answer your prayers, and he's bigger than we sometimes give him credit for. God once told David, he says, if I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you, because he doesn't need us. He has it all wrapped up.
Right.
If we'll just put our confidence in him, he'll see us through.
So what do we do when Satan throws all of our doubts, like for Moses? Well, I can't speak well. I'm not or you've asked me to go to the mission field, and I'm really close with my family, or all those things that run through our head. What do we do with that?
See, and that's some of what some people out there are saying right now is, I've got this challenge that God is giving me, but what about this? What about that? What about the other? And God is saying, I want you to get up and go do it, and I'll work things out. Can you imagine what it was like for Abraham? God said, get up and go to a land that I will show you.
Right.
Not that I'm showing you now, but I will. He didn't give him a map, a brochure. He didn't have GPS. He said, get going. And he had to do that by faith. And because he was so faithful, he is called in the Bible the father of the faith.
Right.
Yeah.
I recently saw a meme that said, Noah looked crazy to everyone until it started to thunder and rain.
I'm telling you.
So it's
And he
very
got the only souls he got were his own family.
Right.
He preached 120 years.
And
He had to have dedication and commitment. 120 years, the only souls he got.
faithful.
That's right. Was his family. Yeah.
So you taught in Philippians 4:6 that the Lord doesn't want us to be anxious about anything. It takes a certain mindset to do that. How do we do that?
It takes a mindset that is prayerful and seasoned and is not relying on himself or herself, but you're putting your confidence in the Lord. You know what it takes? It takes having experience in the Lord and seeing how he has worked for your life, even in the past, and how he's doing now, to have confidence that he'll do the same in the future. It takes an intimate relationship with him.
So do you think, even in the good times, if we're going through a season where we're like, Lord, this is great, nothing's really going bad, things seem to be going pretty well, that is a time where we just practice meditating and resting and really deepening our relationship with the Lord, because the valleys are going to come.
They're going to come. They're going to come. And if you get that period of respite, you want to pull aside and go ahead and plug in. Plug in and refill up. You get to the gas pump and fill up again, because you've got another journey to make. You're right. That's a good time to do it.
So you talked about the comfort is in knowing that the Lord understands our anxieties and that he's there to support us. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, because he made us, and he knows how each of us is made. I do personality assessments. I use a system called the DISC, which a lot of people use in the workplace. And there's the biblical DISC that I'm certified in, as well as the secular. And when I do this, I stress to the people the fact that God knows, even before you speak, he knows based on how he has wired you, how you will react and how you will respond. And because he knows all of that, he has great intimacy with us. We need to get to know him on the level where we've seen in the Word of God, we've seen how God has handled this situation, how he's handled another situation, and say, surely if the Lord handled that over there, he can handle this over here for me.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing.
So worrying about tomorrow is a command. If I'm consumed constantly with worry to where it's even maybe affecting my health, I'm concerned about, how would you direct me if that's just totally taking over my life?
If you're worried, what are you worried about now, you're saying?
Anything. It could be anything in the future, whatever. It's just consuming me.
Yeah, and it can get to that point. And you know what? A lot of times it graduates. It can start off very small, but because we're not attending to it and turning it over to the Lord, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the circumstances just take it all out of proportion. We have to pull in, and I keep going back to this, I sound like a broken record, but we have to pull in and come to the Lord and get that confidence that only he can give us. I think about when they were marching around the walls of Jericho, and that was a thing that what's the point? What's the big deal in marching around these walls? And they never saw it until that seventh day when they marched around the seventh time, and then boom, all of a sudden there was God stepping in. But you have to follow God to the nth degree in what he's giving you to do, you know. Be faithful to him and he will certainly be faithful to you.
Absolutely. So how does a mature believer truly find joy and trust in the Lord and that peace that passes all understanding? It's easy as you age, you have maybe a larger family, maybe now you have grandkids, and there's a lot more that's out of your control. And you worry about the future for your grandkids maybe, or, you know, all those types of things.
I think to start making a list, and I've thought about this, start making a list of the things that the Lord has done for you in the past. All those wonderful things that are really out and out testimonies about God's work, that should really give us some hope and encouragement, you know, about what God can do for us in the future. And I think that, you know, and it's not that God is not futuristic, he is. He has told us to look forward to his return. And that's an important thing about the future. So if we will take a look at the marvelous things that God has done, the children of Israel, as they would look back and wonder, how did we get over? God finally brought us over. That's a testimony that should be encouraging to us to know that, well, God can do anything. Look at what he's done for me in the past. I'm looking forward to see what he's going to do in the future.
Right. So we're told in the Word that God's the same today, yesterday and tomorrow. So knowing that, how would you encourage those watching, thinking about the future? How would you encourage them to pray for the future, to trust in God for their future?
I think looking at just what the Word says, he's the same yesterday. You're looking at his actions and behavior for us in the past, and today, what he's doing. And he's a God of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He's all of that, but most importantly, he is a God of right now. The Bible says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. We need to have that now faith to believe him for the moment. Believe him for the moment and just push forward. That's what I'd say. And Stacy, we're all out of time. Thank you very much. Enjoy talking with you every time you come by to be with us. And Stacy will be back again with us next week, so make sure you stay tuned for us next week, and we'll be back with you then. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of In the Word with Bill Harris. Join us next week for more inspired teaching from God's Word. Experience more of this anointed teaching in your own church or ministry setting. Contact Bill Harris to schedule a seminar. Topics include scriptural teaching to strengthen marriages and family, in-depth knowledge about the end times, the biblical principles of finances, and a biblical insight to discerning personality styles and enhancing relationships. Contact Bill Harris through Rapture Ministries, Post Office Box 948, Holland, Ohio 43528. Email billharris@bex.net or call 419-340-2006.